All right, everybody, we're going to talk about two of my favorite range hammers out there in the full-size category. That is going to be the CZ P10F optics ready. This thing is a monster in the hand. And of course, the Sig RXP X full size with those 21 round 2A PEZ dispensers. These things are both monsters out there on the range. They are hammers and everything looks like a nail. I've gotten a little bit more and more into the CZ stuff. I've done some triggers to both the P10C and now the P10F. A couple other small things, and I gotta say both of them are performing absolutely flawless. After about 2 years, and I wanna say I've got a couple thousand rounds, maybe just over 2, through both of them, just between fun and testing parts and letting other people, of course, get a little bit of the action with them out there on the range as well. But late last year, that Sig bug bit me hard with the RXP X carry, and then I had to go out and get the RXP X full size because that carry just felt so good out there, and this thing was an absolute tack driver to the point where it could almost hide your deficiencies as a shooter. You know, when I started the whole channel, I was doing a lot of Glock stuff, and people kind of came for the Glock, and then they stuck around for everything else. But since then, I've done a bunch of other stuff, especially with 1911s or SIGs or CZs or H&Ks, because I was just carrying Glocks for work at the time because I couldn't get other things approved where I worked at until the past several years where they allowed us to carry pretty much whatever we wanted. Which is good because it's always just nicer to be able to carry something that you actually want to carry out there, especially if you're carrying it for work. Now, I've been getting, like I said, more and more into the CZ and the SIG because they are just so much fun out there on the range. I recently had a moment with this SIG out there that lit something like this. Me, dude, it is a goddamn, you can everything up and still shoot perfect with it, dude. Now, normally I kind of script vids, but these things are just too much fun to kind of have like a robotic script or bullet points, so we're just gonna wing it on this one. So both of these things do have aftermarket triggers in them, so I cannot compare, at least today, because I'm lazy and I didn't want to take the triggers out of these for the video. So we're not going to compare the triggers on it, but hey, spoiler alert, just, you know, share it with you right now. The CZ had a better trigger out of the box. I know some people may disagree and say the X series trigger in the SIG is better. I honestly thought the CZ P10F had a just flat out better trigger all around out of the box as compared to the X series from, you know, SIG. But either way, these two Gorilla guns, and I call them Gorilla guns because they are for Gorilla sized hands, had better triggers out of the box than a lot of the other stuff out there in the striker fired world, especially when it comes to comparing them to say something like a Glock. And honestly, I thought the triggers in these were both better than the H&K out of the box as well. Now, being that those two things are both monsters and they are large and rather heavy, that translates into how they perform out there in the range. A little bit more length, a little bit more weight, a little bit more grip, just helps controlling that recoil impulse as you're out there. You're not going to feel it as much, although with a higher bore axis, you might feel a little bit more of a buck as compared to like a straight back push. But once you kind of get used to it, you get over it pretty quick. Well, basically for both of these things, you got lots of grip, lots of barrel, and lots of slide to work with out there. Well, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, turn those bell notification icons on. Definitely give the video a thumbs up for either the CZ or that SIG if you're into it, or if you're into anything else, just go ahead and hit that thumbs up button anyways. So I know you guys may be looking for a couple of these things. I will leave links over at my website for you so you can try to find them, but everything has been selling out, just all the insanity that's been going on for like the past year and a half. And a huge shout out to Blackout Coffee, a new channel sponsor, and they've given you guys a code to save a little bit on that caffeine that we all need to get going and keep going throughout the day. The code is TC10. And you can fulfill your coffee needs. I'll leave a link down in the description for you guys for that. Well, that's enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and be about it. We'll get into the specs on these things so you guys can take a good look at them side by side and just kind of help you guys figure out if you are looking for one, which one it might be. So we're going to get into these things right now. All right, we're going to get into these two absolute hammers. Look at the size of those things. It just cracks me up every time I grab one of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the specs on these so you compare them side by side so you guys have a really good idea of what they look like next to each other and everything they come with. So not going to do trigger pulls since I have aftermarket triggers in both of them, but spoiler alert, like I said, out of the box the CZ definitely had a better trigger even than the X series and the SIG, just my opinion. Let's go ahead and rock and roll with the CZ right here. This is the P10F polymer reinforced striker fired 9mm. Comes with 19 +1 magazines right there. You can see big boys in there with that high-vis follower in it. We got a total barrel length here is going to be 4.5 inches. The overall width of this, 1.26 inches, a total weight of 28.2 ounces, and an overall length of 8 inches. That is a big girl for sure. We'll get into kind of the rest of this stuff later. Those are just the main specs on it. It does come with the blacked out rear and the high-vis front night sight. That is from the factory. You do not get a mounting plate for the optic. You have to buy those separately. Now let's talk about the other big boy, the Sig, the full-size RXP X Full. This thing is a hammer as well, and everything definitely looks like a nail. So this is going to come with the two 17-round magazines, but I've got the big 21-round fun sticks in here, which, why not? Freedom. More to a Pez to dispense out on the range. Overall length, again, on this one is going to be 8 inches, just like the CZ. Got an overall width of 1.4, little thicker. Height is 6.4, barrel is 4.7, so it is a little bit longer, and the weight is 30 ounces, so it's even more hefty than the CZ is. This one comes with the rear and front night sight, but the rear is darked out, and it does come with the optic, the Romeo 1 Pro, and it is milled directly into the slide. A little bit of a difference where this is a modular optic plate, and this is specifically milled for the Delta Point Pro or the Romeo 1 Pro. Now, let's go ahead and talk about these things as far as direct comparison side by side. So you're going to notice there are a lot of similarities here between the two, especially when you start looking at the slides like this. So coming up on these ones you're going to see on the CZ, you're going to have a very thick kind of texture in there, almost Glock-esque style. A little bit thicker, a little bit more directional, and it is a lot of grip to get your hands on right there. We do have those big 19 rounders. We do not have a magwell in there or anything like that to speak of. Overall, the grip is pretty thin. You do get the interchangeable back straps, but it is definitely easy to get your hands on. Very nice knurling right there on that swappable magazine release. And then just, they've done a good job rounding it off under here, underneath that trigger guard. So when you get in that firing grip, it is still comfortable. Very generous trigger guard in here. I sometimes, the smaller trigger guards like on Glocks, my finger's pretty big. So, going in there is a little bit difficult. Moving forward, you got that ambidextrous slide stop, slide release right there. Your takedown lever, and then you've got some more of that texture with those reference stippling on it right there. Going forward, you do have a multi-section 1913 pick rail. Moving our way back up into the slide, plate's the plate on the rear. They're almost all the same. You got those front serrations, you got those rear serrations, typical logos on there. Nicely chamfered off slide right there so you can get over it if you do press checks or if that's how you cycle the slide, completely up to you. Barrel and everything else, very similar. Similar extractor as very many other pistols out there. That's basically overall the CZ in a nutshell. So the Sig RXP X Full, God, this thing is just big. So talking about this thing from magwell all the way up to muzzle, the X series frames, specifically the RXP, does come with an integrated factory magwell on it. It's quite nice, and it gives a ton of surface area to get that magazine up in there quick, fast, in a hurry. Much more of a sandpaper style texture right there on this one, all the way around the back strap, that pad, up the side strap, on the front, and then a single finger groove that you can see right there. Coming up, again, about the same as the CZ. They've done a nice job rounding that off. It's a very generous trigger guard from my big old sausage fingers in there, which is definitely nice. And you can see how it's sectioned off in there so you don't accidentally hit the ambidextrous slide stop, slide release, which is definitely nice. You got that big beaver tail right there because it's a little bit higher of a bore axis, so it kind of bucks a little bit more on you. You got to get used to that. Moving forward, you got your takedown lever, and you do have a multi-section pick rail as well. Working our way up, like I said, you got those good sights, front rear serrations, you've got the typical looking extractor, and you are going to have a swappable magazine release. It is not ambidextrous. So if you don't know Sig, the frame is just a piece. The actual metal part inside here, the fire control unit is removable and you can move it from frame to frame to frame. A little bit different, whereas the CZ is the traditional, you know, pistol style in the striker fire market, where the frame is the actual pistol. So again, this one comes directly milled for the Delta Point Pro Romeo 1 Pro. I do have to say, these X-ray night sights on here, I love that green front. That thing just screams at you when it comes up onto target. And then you can, you know, buy any grip module you want, and you can also buy multiple different conversion plates. Say you want to put a different optic on here than the Romeo 1 Pro or Delta Point Pro. There's several companies that make a plate that goes right on here. This one, I thought they used to come with the protective shrouds like this. I know the RXPX Carry does, but apparently these don't. So it just comes with the optic. I added this, but I've seen them in stores with that on there already. I don't know if that was just me, but my RXPX Carry came with it, but this one I had to buy the kind of shield separately because these Sig optics are a little bit fragile, to say the least. So now that we know the basic specs on these things, let's check out talking about the ergonomic stuff on them. Like I said, you're going to see there's a lot of similarities, kind of how that slide is nose down, or excuse me, chamfer cut. Both those are very much like that, as you can see. And you can see just a little bit of a size difference in the overall length there. The barrel pokes out a little bit more here on the CZ. Now let's talk about one of the things that everybody likes to get excited about, and that's going to be that grip angle. So when we get these on here, you're going to be able to see, try to get these about as good as I can. You're going to be able to see there's a slightly more of a hump on the CZ. You can see it right there poking out the back. A little bit more of an aggressive angle overall than the Sig frame. You can see right there as well, but you can swap out these back plates as desired, where the Sig frame is the module. They got multiple different sizes, multiple different colors. You have to pick the one that you want that best fits your hand. Well, you do have a little bit of modularity here on the CZ. Let's go ahead and talk about that range experience, and let's talk about the price on these things, because everything is just fluctuating wildly in the market right now. And then we're going to talk about my overall feelings and if one, I guess per se, performs better than the other. Well, those are both some big honeys, 8 inches on the length scale, and they are both hefty as well. You know what they say about the big girls? They just shoot better. Honestly, they just shoot better. I don't know where your mind was going, but that weight and length just helps on the range. All right, so two of the biggest things that people want to know is ergonomics and how that trigger actually feels. Like I said, I do believe that out of the box, the CZ flat out had a better trigger. I think the CZs have one of the best triggers in the striker fired market out there, and that's just the way they come. Now, ergonomically, I do like the CZ quite a bit. You got those interchangeable back straps, but I still do find myself when I present a little bit high until I get a couple of rounds off, and then I kind of fall back into place with it. Now, conversely, the RXPX full size here, I do find that it's right there. So it's a little bit more flat for my presentation, a little bit more, I guess, 1911-esque, you could say, which is that flatter angle on the grip. And it's just kind of what I'm used to because I carried a 1911 for so long. Well, that CZ has a little bit better of a trigger right out of the box, but the Sig RXP X Full definitely has a little bit cleaner angles. And I don't know why, I normally don't like finger grooves, but for some odd reason, I like that single finger groove, and it just seems to really just plant my primary hand in there just a little bit better than the CZ does. Now, depending on how you look at it, it's kind of a kick in the pants that you have to buy a plate for the CZ, but then again, it's also a kick in the pants that the slide on the RXP is only milled for the Romeo 1 Pro or the Delta Point Pro. So if you want a different optic, you've got to buy a conversion plate or find one that's in that pattern. When quite honestly, I think the majority of optics are the RMR kind of platform at this point. I don't know why anybody's doing anything different at this point. Well, let's nail down the price. So the RXPX full size, it does not come with the shroud, but it comes with the Romeo 1 Pro and the 17 round mags. So I've seen that one out there for like $850 to $899, almost all of them $899. I only saw it for $850 once, and I think that might have been like a sale or something. but that does come with the higher sights and the optic. So it's a little bit more expensive than the CZ. Now, this used to be cheaper, but recently I've seen anywhere from $650 to $750, which is a little bit more than I paid for it a couple years ago. And like I said, a little bit of a kick in the pants. You've got to buy an optic mounting plate. There are several companies making them. The CZ Custom Shop, I think QVO Tactical, a company called 401 Precision that I actually got sent a plate from. And then I think C&H Precision makes a plate too, and they make some of the better stuff out there. So depending on what you're talking about with optic, and if you want the Romeo 1 Pro or the Delta Point Pro pattern, that could be kind of a wash, because for that $899 you're getting an optic, or the CZ you have to buy one. So I think, you know, if you buy it kind of the way they are right now, you'd spend a little bit more overall with a decent optic on the CZ. Now, talking about that range footage, let's just see a little bit more of it before we get down to which one performs better. Now, I've got to say it's really tough between these two, because they are both just absolute tack drivers out there. The size of them, the length of them, and the grip size on there is great for my big old hands. And they both performed flawlessly. I've not had a single issue with either of these, and they've just been a ton of fun out there on the range. And I can't believe I'm about to say this between the two, because I almost feel like I'm committing a sin. So I've got to like ask forgiveness up front from, you know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, also known as Daddy-O Jr. and the Spook. But honestly, the Sig RXP X full size just performs better for me out there. Don't get me wrong, I love that CZ. This thing is an absolute beast, and I think anybody that chooses it is not making a mistake. But once I got used to the feeling and kind of, like I said, that buck from that little bit higher of a bore axis on the Sig, I just flat out performed better. The angles of it, everything down to being able to get my magazines in there faster and present faster at a flatter profile. For me, it just flat out worked. Now, everybody is different. You have got to test drive these things. You've got to go out there and get them in your hand and see which one you are going to perform best with. And if you think about it, you're not going to buy a house without walking in it and checking it out to make sure the toilets work. You're not going to buy a car without test driving it. Why would you go out and buy a gun without getting your hands on it, at least in the store, feeling it and seeing if it's gonna work for your angles? Because everybody's body is different, your hands are different, the size, the way your wrists are gonna work, and that's going to have a huge determination on which one of these things is gonna be better for you. And I know some of you were expecting me to pick the Sig because I've had that Sig tick. It's like a tick, it bites you and it digs in. But then again, that CZ has been a steady, it's like the girlfriend you keep going back to. Solid performer and just a ton of fun out there. And the performance is nothing to slough at either. It's a hammer out there on the range. Like I said, everything looks like a nail to it. Well, that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and seeing these things side by side. Now remember, like I said, just because the Sig seems to work better for me doesn't mean the CZ won't be your jam, jelly, and peanut butter sandwich. So get out there, get the things in your hand. Of course, dry practice, everybody as much as you can. Ammo is an absolute bear right now, and it's probably going to be that way for at least another 8, 9, 10 months, even maybe a year. A huge thank you to all of my Patreons. This video is made possible by you guys for all the gear and stuff, because these channels are not cheap to run. Another huge thanks to Blackout Coffee. That coupon code TC10 is below, along with that link, so you can get caffeinated and stay caffeinated, because a caffeinated life is a better life. And of course, that 2A swag from Shall Not Comply, the link is down below for that as well. And I think the code is TC10 on that too, or TAC10. I'll leave the link down below and that code will be in there. If you're interested in any of that Shall Not Comply clothing, that sweet, sexy 2A swag. Well, you guys get out there and have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you guys on the next one.